Hi, and thank you for watching us here at Tax Talk UK, where we talk about all things tax and consider other important aspects of working for yourself, being self-employed, running a small business. So today we're going to talk about what happens if you do not submit your personal self-assessment tax return on time. Before I talk about that, if I could please ask you to take a moment to subscribe to our YouTube channel. That way you'll easily be able to refer back to this information if you need to, as well as being able to access other information we have available on a whole host of topics, all aimed at supporting you in your self-employment. And you can find that other information loosely catalogued in the playlist section of our YouTube channel. So back then to late submission of your self-assessment tax return. So the first thing to say is that if HMRC have issued you a notice to submit a self-assessment tax return, then you must either submit that by the deadline in the notice, or if you feel that you don't have a need to submit the tax return, then you must notify them before the deadline. So if, for example, you previously had a source of income that wasn't taxed at source, perhaps from private landlord income, self-employment, perhaps you were liable for the high income child benefit charge, but that's no longer relevant, whatever the circumstances were, and you don't believe you do need to submit, you need to let HMRC know that, because if they have sent you a notice, then they are expecting a return. And if you do fall within the self-assessment system, it can be helpful to have a personal tax account set up on gov.uk and have the app on your phone, because this helps you to easily see what HMRC are expecting from you. So that is the first thing to say. If for some reason that you feel that you haven't submitted your return because you feel that you don't need to submit a return, you need to tell HMRC so they can cancel that and know that that isn't required. But on to then, if you do need to submit a tax return and you don't submit it on time, so you will basically you will receive penalties, but this is not just a one-off penalty. So if you haven't submitted your tax return on the deadline, the next day you will receive a penalty of £100. So ordinarily the online tax return deadline is 31st of January. So 1st of February, if that return hasn't been submitted, you will receive £100 penalty applied to your account, your self-assessment account. But it doesn't end there. So if you then, after 3 months, still haven't submitted that late tax return, you will start incurring a daily penalty of £10 a day. Now that will escalate and can go up to a maximum of £900 if you still haven't submitted that return. Then after that time, if your return still isn't submitted after 6 months, so by the end of July, ordinarily, you would receive, sorry, a 6-month late filing penalty of £300, and then 12 months after, so a whole year, if your return still hasn't been submitted, you would receive a 12-month filing penalty, and that would be a further £300. So if you've kept track of those penalties, as I've mentioned them, then you will realise that if you're 12 months or more late submitting your tax return, then you will receive a total of penalties of £1,600. So that is hopefully good motivation to make sure that you do submit your tax return on time. And you will also, in addition to the late filing penalties, you will also receive late payment penalties. So if there is no tax due, then it would be really frustrating to receive penalties up to £1,600 for late filing, because there is no relation or correlation between the tax due and the penalties. But you're going to, if you do have tax to pay, of course, you could pay what you consider an estimated amount to reduce those penalties, but until you actually file your return, you won't know the exact liability to pay. And if you've calculated your liability, you've obviously got all your information, so then you may as well submit the return. So remember that when the tax year ends in ordinarily in the normal scheme of things, the tax year ends on the 5th of April, and you have till the 31st of January the following year. So you have all that time, and it's only after the deadline that you will start to receive those penalties. So hopefully this is good motivation, because though, as you could see when I went through those penalties do escalate quickly. So even if you find yourself late and you receive the initial £100 penalty, then just bear in mind that the penalties could be as much as 1,600 if your returns as late as 12 months. So it is really important that you get your returns submitted on time, and if you don't manage on time, that as soon as you can do afterwards. If you are obviously struggling for the time because you're doing your own tax return, or you're not really sure what you do, then you can see a potential total penalty of £1,600. It would be well worth paying a professional to do the return if that is the only reason that you've not been able to submit it. So hopefully this helps to understand what the penalties would be. And as I say, remember that the penalties that I ran through are only for the actual late filing. You would have additional penalties for late payment, which will be a percentage of the bill, and again levied at certain time points. And if you haven't submitted a return because you believe that you don't need to submit a return, then you must notify HMRC and ask them to cancel that return that they're expecting. Otherwise, you will incur the penalties. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.